Welcome to Whatever Next Unplugged. Conversations about making transformation more human, more honest, and more likely to stick. And here's my next guest, Clive White, founder and CEO of Hyper Performer and co-founder of Is Everyone Safe? Hi everyone, welcome to Whatever Next Unplugged. And today I have Clive White on the show. Hi Clive.
Hello again, nice to see you.
So it's good, Clive, you're here. We seem to have been in contact over the years, but we both worked together years ago when you were the strategy director at Zurich and I was the head of IT strategy and business architecture. So what have you been doing since and why are we talking today?
Blink in a decade goes by, doesn't it? So it's in Zurich, a number of years doing a very similar role for another insurer, global transformation, restructuring, UK and Middle East in the main, that remit. After that, another 4 or 5 years with a telecoms provider, critical national infrastructure, basically digitizing the organization, moving from sort of legacy engineering to sort of digital platforms. An interesting 18 months or so in a sports organization, governing body, which if one thing tells you that the industry may change, but the problems are the same under the covers. And latterly, just doing some work with an insurance organization looking at AI transformation.
And tell me, there's something else that's going on in your world right now, and that's the studying you're doing to get that key qualification. What's that focusing in on?
Yeah, every sort of 10, 11 years, I seem to sort of want to do something a bit thought-provoking. So after my MBA, I'm now doing a DBA, so I'm working at the École du Pont in Paris. So it's a global DBA, and it's really in this space. So it's looking at technology to disruption. What does it mean for the organization, but particularly what does it mean for the C-suites and leadership in terms of dealing with the almost continuous now technology-based change? But as we know, it's not just about technology, it's about the organizational response, the people response, the human response to that change.
And I noticed on LinkedIn, which is why I asked you to get onto the podcast really, is you put a post up recently about high-performing teams, and something that you've probably noticed, that high-performing teams will often agree in public, but in private, there's not quite that alignment. Where have you seen that show up and how does it show up?
It's going to sound awfully trite, but over the years, what I've reinforced myself is that when you're running a business and certainly changing a business, it is people, process, technology in that order. And I'd put a wrapper around the outside of that called leadership. There are very, very few industries where technology alone becomes a differentiator. And if it is, it's not there for long because it's copied very, very quickly. So what you tend to find is that when you start to change an organization, particularly if there's technology at its core, is it highlights any dysfunctionality that may exist in the organization. And that dysfunctionality, in my experience, is a complex combination of experience of the individuals involved around the leadership team, technology and technical awareness or appetite, and unfortunately a degree of politics and agenda that's at play, which is human nature around career progression and the like. So for me, I always ask to see the CEO early on in any transformation before we say yes, because it's the CEO's job to really build the foundations of that leadership team to then push it through the organization, because you face naturally into some tough decisions or have a uniform answer to those tough decisions and then roll it out. You can't have fragmentation, which happens, unfortunately, all too often. So I think that the organizations I've worked in or with over the many years of doing this kind of stuff, I think the ones that work the best are the ones that have that common burning platform in the future. So there's a almost like an immovable date or event that everyone agrees to, and then suddenly personal agendas kind of falls away a little bit, or makes it easier to fall away because there's a kind of no win answer if you don't hit that date or that milestone or whatever it happens to be. So it shouldn't have to be that way, but they're the easier ones. But the CEO's key in all of that.
And what have you seen when you've said that, in public, everyone's agreeing, but in private, they're not agreeing? What signals do you see that shows that private not agreeing? And as a transformation director or leader, how do you go about looking for those differences?
I'll answer it almost backwards because you see it, because, again, why the CEO is important in this early stage of the transformation is because it's where incentivization and all those dimensions don't align. So, if you're the CTO and in charge of IT, you're a CFO in charge of the money, and you've got something in the middle called change, those two things quite often are, they need to be dovetailed, but quite often aren't. So you might be limited by budget, you might be limited by time frame, might be limited by capabilities in the organization, but the end state need is still there. So what needs to happen is people need to be incentivized in their kind of functional domains, if you will, in a way that is universally aligned to the big outcome. Then everybody succeeds if we hit the outcome. No one succeeds if you don't. So what becomes difficult is when you have one bit of the organization that can succeed in their own dimensions of success that are not aligned to somebody else's, if that big picture is still at risk. So changing the organization but hitting budget, that doesn't always work because you have to make shortcuts or compromises in some way. Likewise, you can't spend too long and too much just on bringing the people along and wait for the organization to catch up. So it's a balancing act between all those dimensions, which are.
And that is the challenge, isn't it? Very much with transformation, what I've seen is that the program gets set, the program gets agreed, a budget is put aside, and everybody starts focusing in on the budget and the deadline and the outcome. And then things are happening below the surface that maybe the different people around the table are representing. And it's how honest they are in the public forum to help people solve that. Are there any other reasons why people may not show up and share disagreement or concern?
Yeah, and I'll use AI because it's everywhere as the most recent example. If you trace back the big technology changes in waves, all the way back from going from the mainframe to client server to network to .com, all the way through to cloud, SaaS, and where we are now. You'll go through the usual hype curve of, oh my God, this is going to be fantastic. It's going to change everything. So, oh, thank God for that. It's a CTO problem. Put it over there. You're spending money, but go fix it over there. You can't do that with AI. Suddenly AI is not just a technology that sits over there in that dark room. It permeates everything. And you've got the fear element of that. You've got the huge opportunity element of that. You've got the cost element of that, both environmental and physical. No one can hide from AI. I'm seeing is those who are comfortable with the concept of technology and change kind of get it and are comfortable with that kind of grey space to try and define what the art of the possible is. Those who don't get the technology or aren't comfortable with the technology change, you get a degree of fear. Am I now getting, it's not about just removing, technology people because AI will replace them, won't it? Actually, does it remove me? Does it remove my people? Does it change how I've got to work? Can I change how I work? So you're starting to see a much more pervasive threat, if that's the right word, to everybody in the organization, which is also has a counter side of opportunity, but you need to understand what the opportunity is. So it's almost being okay that I don't know the answer yet, but also being okay with I need to go find the answer and I can't put my head in the sand, which you have been able to do that in the past potentially to other technology-driven changes.
I mean, we had a bit more time before. I guess we never realised it at the time. But, as you said, going from batch to online to the digital world, to the digital transformations that happened. At the time, it felt like we were having to do it fast, having to do it quickly. But there was a light bulb moment in the middle of it that said, you are changing your organisation. This is fundamentally changing the way your organisation is operating from batch to online to that digital world. And many said that was going to take 10 years. Once people got into it, they said it was going to take 10 years. And I think probably looking back, taking an organisation from what was non-digital to digital probably did take a lot of sweat, tears and years. You mentioned AI and the speed it's moving, and you're saying that we're facing similar challenges and some people get it. Which people don't get it?
You can't really sort of name names and roles, can you? But it's almost back to it's the two bits of the mindset. Do you understand technology and its opportunity? Not necessarily are you technical, but do you understand technology and ability to make it and change? And how do you respond to that change? And those two things create curiosity to move forward. If you start out the mindset thinking, well, it doesn't affect me, or that's somebody else's job, or there's a whole list of reasons why I don't want to engage with this new thing I don't understand. So it's actually about curiosity with a sort of forward momentum towards change. And I've seen people in HR and finance get it early on, and over the years, just as an example, over the years, I've kind of developed a kind of version of Pareto. You go into an organization that is going through change. There's a 10-80-10 model. 10% of the people, and it's not by role, it's by mindset, go, thank God this change is going to happen. Should have done it 2 years ago. Let's crack on. 10% of people will sort of intellectually fold their arms and say, well, what do you know? It's been, it's worked for the last 10 years, so why don't you change? And give you the 10 reasons why it won't work, or the 10 things they've tried over the last 10 years and that didn't work. But the 80% of the population going, I kind of get it. It sounds a little bit different. Go prove it. So you've got to create some opportunities where change feels positive for the greatest number of people as early on as possible, so people feel comfortable that change is okay. And not knowing a defined A, B, C, D path is okay, as long as you're clear that the direction is broadly over there, and you've got a culture whereby you can move towards that, and to a degree be allowed to manage mistakes and move through them. And there's something you said a bit earlier in this session is, I guess, when you come to plan the transformation, the most difficult conversation on day one of the planning is with the CFO, when you say, can you give me 25% contingency for the stuff I don't know? So, and then you'll be 9 months into a program and you say, well, we didn't understand or realize this, and I need an extra £500,000 or whatever. And it's like, well, you're an idiot, aren't you? So it's back to that culture, and why the CEO and the leadership team is so important is that I think I've been in any transformation where the path to your outcome has been a straight line. It's been a very curvy, sometimes it's backwards, left, right to move forwards type line. And that requires some provision in however the organization deals with that for the unknown. If you believe you're going to have an A to Z plan and a perfectly executed milestone, then you've either not done it, you're selling something, or a whole bunch of other reasons perhaps.
Yeah, and I think that unknown could be at the heart of what you're saying. People are prepared to agree publicly, but disagree privately. Because sometimes when you've got underneath the people that didn't shout up publicly at the right time, it's when they eventually do 9 months later that you can sometimes realize you don't have the money to deal with the challenges because that was an unknown. And if people had spoken up more vocally with their objections or perspectives early enough, some of that stuff could have been tackled. And your 10%, 80%, if you're planning based on the positive 10 or planning on the negative 10, you're going to be off by a long shot, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that curvy path through change, that variance is the contingency you're asking for. So I'm not decrying the role of the CFO and financial acumen around the whole process. That's absolutely important for credibility and obviously just survivability of the business. But to believe you can hit a perfect plan over a 5-year program is madness.
Because the technology the technology vendors at the center of this, the ones that can see the possibility of their technologies, can see how technologies can change industries. They do give you the impression that for a certain amount of money, you can transform your business. And then you're right, it comes into maybe a transformation director like yourself, who then sees that possibility, sees that vision of the future, can align a leadership team around that vision and that reimagined state. But the hard work is bringing the human team with you, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess the easy and easy type of transformation to talk about is not new. Is when in financial services in particular, which was I spent many years of my career in, you go from branch network banking to online banking, and during that kind of transformation, just as an example, you're going to have your branch director having to tell his branch or her branch people that there's going to be a good proportion of you out of work. So that's, no one wants to give that message. That's a tough message to give, but that has got to be, in that example, part of the transformational journey for that particular business in that time. It's not great. It's not right. Sorry, it's not kind of, the outcome everyone will want, but it's an essential change because the whole world is moving in that direction. So, and that branch director, for example, he or she needs to be well supported through that process because he or she needs to be successful in the outcome, which is reducing the workforce, unfortunately, deploying the technology and making the new model work. And there's many examples of technology-driven change where people will be affected in some shape or form. And there's not a week goes by now where AI is killing jobs in Meta and other organizations around the world, or being perceived and communicated to be the source of the disruption. So it's a difficult, not nice, but often necessary part of transformation. There's people impact. I always use the expression, business is not personal, but needs to be personable. So how you manage that transition, making sure that people are looked after and retrained, and opportunities to move around the organization where they exist is supported. It's not a cut and shut deal, particularly in a multi-year transformation.
The other angle you said that you're now working in is your business is everyone safe,
Yeah.
business resilience and individual resilience. Where
Yeah.
is AI playing in that? Is that part of it? Is it technology being pervasive, and how do we look after ourselves? What's behind that?
It is. So my co-founder has a background in technology and incident management. He has been in his past career flying into disaster zones or war zones to set up technology to manage the expatriation of people quite often back into safe zones. As you know, grew up in technology and change and saw it from an organizational perspective, cyber attacks, viruses, and the like. So when we met actually through business, I was actually a supplier of service to his business. We just sort of had a meeting of minds, and as we both transitioned out of those businesses over time, we sort of kept in contact and said, we could do this better. We know enough about people management technology and how it all works together to do something better. So we set up essentially a consumer-faced platform which looks at how people run their digital lives, essentially. So digital vaults and digital asset management, digital processes for buying houses and deaths and birth, all those kind of life admin things that no one wants to deal with, but you have to deal with. How do you do that better? And I guess an equivalent view, we've got a corporate version of that, which is around lone working and safety, distributed workforces, hybrid working. How do you look after your people going through their sort of daily work, keep them connected, engaged, and safe, essentially. So AI is in there in terms of we've written a lot of code with AI support for their platforms, but increasingly as the databases begin to build with events, you can start to use AI to interrogate that data in different ways to look for insights perhaps we didn't first see through more traditional methods.
I mean, that whole example, is a use case of transforming the way we operate, the way we work, where we are, and using data. And that in itself will create transformation challenges for people to either get on board and feel safe providing that sort of data. Also be mindful of the environment we're in that's far more challenging than it once was, which I guess is key too.
Yeah, and in many ways, you could. There's many people who probably disagree with this analogy, but AI is an algorithm piece of software running at scale on highly parallel computing, accessing large data sets. All of the things you and I grew up with in terms of how you manage technology are exactly the same in that world than it was 20 years ago. But the thing is now, every human being needs to have an awareness of those disciplines. So data security and privacy for you and your data as a human being is as important as it is when you work in an organization. You wouldn't download something blindly from some random text message to your phone at home, would you? So why would you now have that mindset of, is this real? Is it right? Where does it come from? How do I use it? What happens if I don't use it? What happens if I do use it? All those usual questions that you go through in an organizational sense are now very personal down to the individual. And I think that's the challenge, is that you can't, as you said earlier, put it over there into a CTO's problem area. Thank God you can fix it for us. Everyone's now got to understand a different level of awareness around data and technology and apps and web and how these things present themselves to the individual user as well as the organization. So in many ways, it's do what you'd always would have done organizationally, but at scale for everyone. Without scaring the horses around as a big dark spectre right around the corner waiting to give you problems.
With the studying you're doing and the work you're now involved with, what would be a takeaway for anyone listening to remember that this is about the human and honest side of work as much as the technology and the opportunities that that technology could create.
I think you're either a glass half full or glass half empty person. And so with every opportunity, and AI's definitely an opportunity, it's get curious. Is it you don't no one's asking you to be a technical expert in this thing called AI. But if you were going to a different country, you have a different experience if you learn the language of the country you're going to. AI is going to be everywhere. So it's kind of up to you to learn as much of the AI language as you feel comfortable with, but not learning it will put you at a disadvantage. So it's not about being technical, but go learn, get curious about what AI is, what it isn't, how it affects you, where it sits in your life and your work, and try to understand it. And then talk to your people left and right of you who are probably going through exactly the same process, have exactly the same fears. So you'll almost build a community of awareness and engagement with this thing. This happens to be called AI. Quantum computing will be next. That'll be the next thing that'll come down that people won't understand today, but will need to understand all the implications. So I think if there's one word, or two words, is get curious. Get curious with technology. What does it mean? It's not over there and somebody else's job. It's now actually down to me to understand as much as I'm comfortable with understanding what this thing might mean for me, my work, my organization, my society, my neighbours around me.
Excellent. Well, I'm all in favour of getting curious, as you know, Clive. So thank you for being on the show.
No, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it.
Whatever Next Unplugged. Conversations about making transformation more human, more honest, and more likely to stick. Find out more at whatevernextbook.com.